Hey guys, it's Graham. What's cracking? Let's talk about FABLEHAVEN. What the heck is FABLEHAVEN? It's an American middle grade fantasy series that started in 2006 and benefited greatly from the mid 2000s middle grade fantasy boom that Harry Potter kicked off. When I say benefited from it, it means that not only were there a lot of readers looking for things in that vein that could scratch that same itch and gave them that same feeling that reading Harry Potter gave them, it created a lot of goodwill that allowed readers of that genre to overlook some otherwise pretty substantial flaws. I gave the first book 3 stars, but I enjoyed reading it. It came out when I was 22, and this was at a time when I was reading a lot of fantasy of that caliber. I was still kind of getting back into reading. I'd only been home from Spain for about a year, and I was still kind of getting my feet under me. And so, reading stuff that was at a simpler grade level was just easy to do. I wasn't really ready to tackle anything substantial in English just because my brain was still recalibrating. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the series, more or less the plot of the main book, and why this is relevant now, almost 20 years after it debuted. So the main characters are a couple of kids named Seth and Kendra Sorensen. Seth is the little brother, Kendra's the big sister, and they're at their grandmother's funeral, and the grandmother was really rich. The parents were rich, and as their parting present to all of the kids and stuff, the parents got an all expenses paid cruise, and the only place for Seth and Kendra to stay for 2 weeks is with the other grandparents. And they live on a farm out in Connecticut. Not a farm, it's a ranch. It's something of that caliber. Several dozens, hundreds of acres, whatever. It's a large stretch of land. And their dad is talking to their grandpa, and they're like, yeah, the kids have got to come stay with you. And he's like, now is really not a good time. Well, reason being is that this Sorensen ranch or whatever is secretly a wildlife preserve for magical creatures. But it's not just some whimsical, magical, everything is good type place. It's, there are creatures on this preserve that can hurt you. And being a caretaker of this place is a big responsibility. You've got to know the rules of it. You got to know what your protections are and what dangers to avoid. And otherwise things can go horrifically wrong. The reason Grandpa says this is a bad time is because at the time that the kids get dropped in his lap and have to stay at the ranch for 2 weeks, his wife has been cursed and turned into a chicken by an evil witch or something. Okay, crap, something's going on here. There's there are protections on the ranch and stuff. You can't actually see the creatures unless you drink milk from an enchanted cow out in the barn or something. If you drink it, then you get magical sight for the day, and you can see things as they really are. It seems like there's just a lot of pretty butterflies and small birds and stuff, but if you drink the milk, then you can see that those are actually fairies and that they're pixies running around. And, that's not a big, gigantic, muscular horse over there in the field. That's a centaur, and, so on and so forth. But there are also demons and monsters that live on the preserve, and, the kids have to be wary of that. Kendra is the responsible older sister. Seth is just a little POS, and you really learn to hate this kid. It's not that he's evil. It's just that he's I don't even know how old he is. He's 8, and I've got a son who's that age. It's yeah, you're basically this kid. He just thinks that he's invincible and that he knows better, and he's constantly getting himself into trouble, screwing around with things that he shouldn't be messing with. And that's one of the oft-repeated lessons of this preserve is, look, this isn't just some magical fun place where, ooh, look, there's a dragon, oh, look, there's a whatever. You do something wrong, there's going to be a consequence for it. That's one of the better lessons of the series, and it's reinforced constantly throughout. Good and evil exist, and, we have laws that we all have to abide by, and as long as you, a good person, abide by these laws, then this thing, a bad creature, can't hurt you. But if you screw around with it, there's going to be a cost for it. The first book was fine. I gave it 3 stars. Some of my peers in the writing community are way lower on it than I am. DJ Butler recently said in one of his YouTube videos, he's I thought that book was atrocious, but it sold like gangbusters. I'm I didn't think it was bad. I enjoyed most of it. And then when the sequel came out a year later, the author, Brandon Mole, had leveled up hard. Like the stakes went up, the interest went up, the reveals, the payoffs, all that stuff was all significantly better than it had been in the first book. It's like, oh, cool. And they pretty much got better from there. There were 5 books in the original series. He took a hiatus, and then he wrote a sequel series that started 5 or 6 years later. And these books were a tremendous success. It was kind of like the homegrown American response to Harry Potter. And most of them came out when I was living in Utah during my college years. That's where the author was. And there was some school, Cottonwood High School, Cottonwood Middle School, something like that. They had a big amphitheater there. And the publisher always put on these huge productions for the release parties. And there were like rock bands and comedy troupes that would do sketches and stuff. And the author was there to talk about the book, and he had sold movie rights at one point. Like it was getting substantial. And then he would hang out at the end for a signing. I think I went to those launch events for like the last 3 books, just because I kept enjoying them more and more. And now here I am all these years later. I've got my own kids reading them. They get really big into them. This series has been successful for a middle grade fantasy. When the second series followed up, and it's with the same characters. They're just a little bit older. They're in their mid-teens now. When the second series started up in 2016, it was called Dragon Watch, and the first book was really good. The second one was a little bit less so. And by the time the third one came out, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm out of the quadrant where I can read this book for young kids, even as a guy. It was different being in my 30s versus being in my 20s, and I wasn't really trying to write middle grade anymore, so I wasn't getting a whole lot of benefit out of reading so much middle grade, books for elementary school kids, basically. So I tapped out of that, but my kids are still reading them and still enjoying them. The reason this is relevant now is, from what I understand, Angel Studios, the little independent, we're Christian and right-wing studio, like they've had a couple of really good movies and some others that just seem kind of vanilla and fine. I believe it was announced that next year they're doing a movie of the first book. It's like, okay, cool. I'm glad for Brandon Mole having success and stuff. Sounds like he's hit a couple of speed bumps in life. You can have all this financial success and popularity and be adored by readers, but he got divorced several years ago. He says his wife left him, and he remarried. Sounds like things are going great now. Better now, but there's probably no such thing as like an easy divorce when that happens to you. So he got his feet back under him, but it's got to be hard to be dealing with that. But I'm happy for him having success with his creative projects. And hey, 20 years after the first book came out, and he's sold millions of copies of it at this point, it's getting turned into a movie. In fairness, though, I wanted to talk about a discussion that I had with my friend Adam a couple of weeks ago. He's got several kids that are the same age as mine, and a few that are older. Like, pick a number between 1 and 18. Yep, Adam has a kid that's that age. Like, he's a big family, and they do a lot of reading. And he tried reading that one, and he's like, "Dude, I freaking hated that book." I was like, "Really? What did you hate about it?" And he named 2 scenes specifically, and I was like, oh, I forgot about those. Yeah, those are pretty freaking weird. Like, I guess so. Remember I said there's an enchanted cow, and you've got to drink the enchanted cow's milk to be able to see, like, the fairies and stuff. This cow is like the size of a semi-truck. It's a massive, magic, enchanted cow. And there's a scene where the grandma and the grandpa, both get swept away by magical creatures or something, and for like a day or two, Seth and Kendra have to run the ranch, and they got to milk this gigantic cow. And it's a really protracted scene that gets really descriptive about like Seth climbing a stool and like jumping onto the udders and like holding on, milking this cow like he's on a bungee cord or something. Okay, yeah, it's freaking weird. Like, if you're a kid, it would be moderately amusing to imagine that, but it is weird in retrospect. And there was another scene where they get the grandma back, but then they've got to negotiate with a demon to help rescue grandpa or something. And the demon's like, "You have to give me a back massage." And there's like this 2-page description of giving the demon a massage for an hour. I was like, yeah, that was weird. Stuff like that probably contributed to me giving that book 3 stars. Like, overall, the enchantment of the setting, like the fact that I found the characters engaging, and you definitely get a response out of the reader by making him want to slap Seth for his lippiness and his bad decisions, but he does, throughout this book and throughout the series, learn from his mistakes. Like there's payoff for it. It's not just like, hey, let me get an easy reaction out of the reader by creating this character that's easy to hate. Like, you don't necessarily hate him. You just want to slap him in the mouth a couple of times and make him straighten up. But I think it's a realistic portrayal of a kid that age. I thought it then, and I definitely think it now that I've had 2 kids that are that age. And my daughter's starting to be a little bit feisty. So, is what it is. If you've got kids in that age range, like they may like this series if they haven't checked it out yet. I did encourage my friend Adam, was like, I agree with what you're saying about those scenes in the first one. If you can muscle past that, like the first book was fine, and they get way better as they go. So that's my ringing endorsement of Fablehaven as a series, if not necessarily the debut book. And it'll be cool to see how that adaptation goes. I like seeing people who work hard at their craft succeed, and in good and earnest ways. He set out to create a wholesome, family friendly, but also compelling for all the right reasons, middle grade fantasy. And I think the fact that it resonated with so many people on that level is a testament to its success. Finally, like one of the most heartwarming aspects of this whole series was that before the 5th one came out, the final book in that first arc, there was a kid who he was around the same age as the characters up there in Utah. He was given a terminal diagnosis. He had some illness, and he was a huge fan of the series. And basically, he was given a very short lifespan. And I don't know if it was a Make-A-Wish Foundation or something similar. They asked him, "What do you want? What can we do for you?" And he's like, "I want to know how Fablehaven ends." And so they got in touch with Brandon Mole, and he's like, "Okay, well, for legal reasons, there has to be an NDA, but I'll explain to you what happens here, and we'll go into detail, and then you can ask me whatever questions you want." And he talks to this kid for like an hour or two and explains it all to him. And the family abided by the NDA and all that. This kid got his wish, and then I remember specifically at the launch party for the 5th book, Brandon Mole brought the kid up on stage, and he's like, hey, he's shown some improvement, and he was able to make it, and he's here. The kid was wearing a hat. I think he might have had to have his head shaved for whatever condition he was going through. But hey, he was able to pull through and still read the book, which, okay, yeah, it was spoiled for him a little bit, but hey, he made it. And unfortunately, he did succumb to his illness a couple of years later. I remember seeing Brandon Mole announce that on Twitter. Always sad when somebody goes before their time, but he was able to do something for that kid along the way. Many moons ago, I was, single Graham. I was dating a girl who was in med school, and as part of her rotation, she had to work with elderly terminal patients. And this would have been 2006 or something. She was telling me about it, and she said I had a patient who expressed to me, and I didn't even realize this. This was an elderly patient, 70 something, who was given a very short period of time to live because of cancer. And mentioned kind of in an offhand way, she said, it sucks. I'm never going to see how Harry Potter ends. And because Harry Potter came out, the final book came out in 2007, and it was a massive sensation at the time. And my doctor friend was like, I'd never considered that, but there are people who get into these big series, and then something happens, and for whatever reason, they never get to find out. Art impacts us all in different ways, and we can all have different responses to it and different interactions with it. I just really like the wholesome interactions that people get to have, and love a happy ending to a good story. And at least as far as the first arc is concerned, those 5 books, it does that tremendously well. Don't know how the second 5 books wrap up. Like I said, I got kind of burned out with the sequel series about halfway through, but hey, maybe when my kids finish reading them, I'll interrogate them for their take on it. But if you've read Fablehaven, let me know what you think. That'll do it for today. Drive safe. See you out there.